He ruled the known world. 60 million people, 14 legions, an empire that stretched from the Atlantic coast of Spain to the Euphrates River in modern Iraq. And every night, alone by lamplight in a military tent on the front lines of a war he did not choose, he wrote to himself. Not proclamations, not philosophy for public consumption, private notes, reminders, corrections. The quiet, relentless self-examination of a man who refused to let power make him into what power makes of most men. He never begged for approval. He never performed virtue for the crowd. He held one of the most corrupting forces in human history, absolute power, for 19 years, and emerged from it not diminished, not dissolute, not drunk on what he could take, but more precise, more disciplined, more deeply himself. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and what he left behind is not a history lesson, it is a blueprint. Not for emperors, for any man who has decided that his life will be built from the inside out, that the wealth, the authority, the unshakable presence that other men spend their entire lives chasing from the outside will only be found by going inward, being honest, and refusing, absolutely refusing, to become less than what he knew himself to be capable of. You have been trying to build power from the outside. That is why it keeps collapsing. Today, that changes. Here is what you were taught about power. It comes from position, from title, from the accumulation of resources, followers, status symbols, and the validation of people who matter. Get enough of those things and you will feel, finally, genuinely powerful. That is the lie. Marcus Aurelius had all of those things on the first day he became emperor. The title, the armies, the treasury, the absolute legal authority to do anything he wanted to any person alive. And he wrote privately that none of it changed the fundamental challenge, that the only empire worth governing was the one inside his own skull, that a man who could not govern his own mind was not made more powerful by governing a continent, he was made more dangerous. And that the man who could govern his own mind needed nothing else to be fully, completely, terrifyingly powerful. The Stoics built their entire framework on a single distinction that most people hear and immediately forget, because it is so simple they cannot believe it contains everything. The distinction between what is up to us and what is not. What is up to us? Our judgments, our desires, our impulses, our will. Everything else, reputation, wealth, the opinions of others, what happens to us, not up to us. The man who has organized his psychology around things outside his control has organized his psychology around a foundation that can be taken from him at any moment. And the man whose foundation can be taken is not powerful. He is contingent. Marcus Aurelius built his power on a foundation that no army, no plague, no loss could reach. That is the blueprint, and it is available to every man willing to do the work. Marcus Aurelius called it the Inner Citadel, the fortress of the rational mind that external circumstances cannot breach unless the man inside opens the gates. In his meditations, the private journal he kept for himself, never intended for publication, he returns again and again to the same practice. The deliberate retreat from external noise into the interior space where his own judgment, values, and sense of identity lived untouched by whatever was happening outside. The walls were being breached on the Danube. The plague was killing thousands in Rome, enemies on every border, and Marcus went inward not as escape but as preparation. The man who knows who he is cannot be told who he is. The man who knows what he values cannot be bribed away from it. The man who knows where his foundation lies cannot be destabilized by the shaking of the surface. The practical application of this is not meditation in the performance sense. It is the daily, unglamorous practice of examination. What did I do that was not in accordance with my nature? Where did I allow external events to determine my internal state? Where did I mistake activity for purpose? These are not therapeutic questions. They are strategic ones. They are the audit of a man who treats his own character as the most important enterprise he will ever manage. The citadel is not given, it is constructed, one examination at a time. The man who governs himself cannot be governed by anything else. Marcus Aurelius understood that the most important skill any man can develop is not strategy, not persuasion, not financial acumen. It is the discipline of perception. The ability to see events as they actually are, stripped of the catastrophizing, the wishful thinking, the ego-driven distortion that the untrained mind automatically applies to everything it encounters. When a business fails, the untrained mind says, "I am a failure." The disciplined mind says, "This enterprise did not succeed under these conditions." The first perception closes doors, the second opens them. Epictetus, who was born into slavery, had his leg deliberately broken by his owner, and became one of the most influential philosophers in history, wrote that men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions they have of things. The thing itself is neutral. The interpretation is everything, and the interpretation is entirely always up to us. This is not the instruction to pretend bad things are good. It is the instruction to see things as they are, clearly, precisely, without the amplification that makes the manageable feel catastrophic, and then to act from that clear perception rather than from the story the frightened mind invented about it. The wealthy men who have internalized this discipline move through setbacks with a speed that looks supernatural. It is not that they don't feel the blow. It is that they have trained themselves to see the blow as information rather than verdict, and information can always be used. Marcus Aurelius understood that the man organized around acquiring things outside himself has chosen an architecture of permanent dissatisfaction, because what can be acquired can be lost. What is given by circumstance can be taken by circumstance, and the man whose sense of sufficiency depends on what he possesses will never, regardless of what he possesses, feel sufficient. The Stoic economy of desire is not asceticism. Marcus did not reject wealth, comfort, or pleasure. He rejected attachment to them, the psychological state in which their presence becomes necessary for the man to feel whole. He regularly imagined the loss of everything he valued, not to cultivate despair, but to immunize himself against the terror of loss that would otherwise make him vulnerable to anyone who threatened what he had. The man who has genuinely reckoned with losing everything and found that he is still, fundamentally, himself, cannot be held hostage by the threat of loss. And the man who cannot be held hostage negotiates from a position of power that no amount of external wealth can replicate. The man who needs nothing from the deal wins the deal. Here is where most men misread the Stoics. They hear virtue and they think softness. They think compliance. They conclude that the Stoic path is the path of the gentle man who puts others first and accepts what he is given. Marcus Aurelius was none of those things. His virtue was precision. The four Stoic virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, are not prescriptions for niceness. They are the four pillars of a psychology so internally consistent, so uncontradicted by its own behavior, that it generates authority the way a tuned instrument generates sound, as the natural consequence of its own integrity. Wisdom, the accurate, ego-free assessment of what is actually true and what it actually requires. Justice, giving each person and each situation exactly what it deserves, no more from sentiment, no less from fear. Courage, saying what needs to be said to the person who needs to hear it, making the decision that needs to be made without waiting for the room's approval. Temperance, mastery of the appetites. The man who governs his appetites is dangerous in the best possible sense. He is the man who does not need what you are offering, which means you cannot use it to move him. These four, lived consistently, not performed publicly, but practiced privately, build a character that wealth follows. Virtue is not the reward of success. It is the architecture that makes success structural. Marcus Aurelius did not want to be emperor. He wanted to be a philosopher. He was given the empire by the accident of succession, and he accepted it with what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of fate. The complete acceptance of what is given, not as resignation, but as the recognition that this, exactly this, is the material from which your life must be built. He governed with totality, not because he loved power, because the thing in front of him required his full capability, and giving anything less was a violation of his own nature. Your duty is not a cage. It is the specific form your excellence takes in this particular life, under these particular circumstances, with these particular capacities. The man who brings his full nature to his full duty does not feel constrained by it. He feels expressed by it. Accept what is given completely, then dominate it completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote it as immunization, the morning practice of a man who understood that the single greatest threat to his effectiveness was the expectation that the world and the people in it would behave differently than they actually do. The man who expects gratitude and receives ingratitude is destabilized. The man who expected ingratitude and prepared for it is not. He is free to respond with clarity and precision rather than with reactive emotion. Your daily weapon is the morning examination and the evening audit. In the morning, what is likely to be difficult today, and what does my best self look like in the face of it? In the evening, where did I act in accordance with my values and where did I not? Not as self-punishment, as calibration, as the slow, undramatic process of becoming, day by day, correction by correction, the man the Stoic blueprint describes. Marcus Aurelius was not born the man the Meditations reveals. He built that man deliberately, over decades, in private, through exactly this practice. You are not trying to change what you do. You are deciding who you are. There is a version of you that Marcus Aurelius would have recognized. He is not louder than the room. He is more settled than it. He enters every situation already examined, already having asked himself what this moment requires, already having decided what no pressure will move him from. He does not perform confidence. He is constituted by it. His wealth does not make him. He makes his wealth as the natural consequence of a character so free from the distortions of ego and fear, and the desperate need for approval that the right decisions become not heroic but obvious. The compound interest of deliberate living, accumulated over years, produces a life that the undisciplined man cannot access regardless of his talent or his opportunity. He is not cold, he is free. And in a world of men performing freedom while being driven by appetites they cannot name, a man who is actually free is the rarest and most powerful thing alive. Marcus Aurelius returned to death in the Meditations more than to almost any other subject. Not with dread, with precision. He listed the great men of history, the conquerors, the philosophers, the emperors before him, and noted that all of them were gone. His point was not nihilism. It was urgency without panic. The time for the examined life, the disciplined life, the life built from the inside out, is exactly as long as your life, not longer. Every day spent organizing your psychology around things that can be taken from you is a day that did not belong to you in any meaningful sense. You have a number of mornings remaining, a number of examinations, a number of corrections, not tomorrow, now. What was laid out today, the inner citadel, the discipline of perception, the economy of desire, the virtue that earns, the meditations as daily weapon. This is the blueprint. The practice, the specific daily protocols drawn from the Stoic tradition, the deeper frameworks that require more than passive consumption to use, that lives behind the join button. It is not for the man who wants to read about Marcus Aurelius. It is for the man who is ready to do what Marcus Aurelius did. Most won't, that's the point. If you are not subscribed, do it now, not as a gesture, as the first act of the examined life.